Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Welcome to the Epic Tales from the Sewers podcast. Strap into the party wagon and hold on to your pizza. All right, not bad, not bad. Theme song. Welcome back, everybody, to the Epic Tales from the Sewers podcast. I am your host, Justin. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Eric Will. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Justin. How about yourself, sir?
I'm excited, man. We got a good topic today. We got a nice guest. You excited?
I am. I mean, it does have barbarian and TMNT in the same sentence, so I'm kind of happy about it.
Yeah, exactly. Our guest today is an art collector of a very specific type of TMNT artwork. Eric and I had the pleasure of meeting our guest at Granite State Comic Con last year, 2023. Please welcome our guest, Mr. Josh Even.
Hello. Thanks for having
Welcome.
me.
Yeah, no, we're excited. We seek out people who are interesting people to talk to within this community, and you are incredibly interesting. Your specific collection has just kind of really entranced me, and I was so glad that you actually have it collected on Comic Art Fans, where you can look at it all in a gallery. That is amazing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. No, this is something that it's kind of taken on a life of its own. It started off fairly slow, and I don't know if we'll get into the history of sort of how this whole thing started, but
Oh, literally my
um,
first question.
oh, okay. But yeah, it's interesting to be known for something. I'm not an artist, I'm not a writer. I'm just a huge fan of the Ninja Turtles and really always have been from the beginning.
Nice.
And it's kind of expressed itself in lots of different ways, and I've always been a collector. But this thing has been like, this is like the thing they're going to remember me for, like I had this
Well,
idea and I'm like, I'm
let's
just going to
dive
go
into
with
that.
it.
So let's start there. What's your origin story with the turtles? How did you get started?
I was thinking as I was listening to some of your other podcasts and sort of, I knew, these questions that you ask folks. I wish I could remember exactly the moment I first picked up the first comic, but I had collected comics since I was a little kid. And I'm old, right? I was born in 76. So when I was in like elementary school, I was getting comic books from, I can imagine, the grocery store, the
Yep.
little like magazine shop that was kind of within walking distance from my house. I lived right next door to a shopping mall, so I would be walking around the mall, a latchkey kid, so I would just
Oh yeah.
wander around the neighborhood. All of my friends lived in my neighborhood, and we would walk around and just kind of explore different places. But between comic books that I must have gotten at the grocery store and finding the little comic book shop, I was reading comics. And at some point in the mid 80s, I got into Ninja Turtles. And this was before the cartoon, before the toys. I'm one of those like hipster Ninja Turtle fans that liked it before it was as big of a thing as it became.
Nice.
So I remember how wild it was for me to see all of that happen when Ninja Turtles were just the thing that I liked and nobody else had ever heard of them. And I would draw them, in my notebooks at school, and was just super into it, to seeing, the commercials, the first commercials for the cartoon, and just how weird that was for me, seeing something that seemed so niche and bizarre become something really big. And then as in, the as the Ninja Turtles sort of grew in popularity, I just really held on to just the comics. I wasn't a huge fan of the cartoon. I felt like it was too kiddie, and it wasn't like the books that I had been reading, right? I mean, obviously it was going for something different. I appreciate that now, but when I was a kid, I did not like the cartoon. I watched the first couple episodes, and after the first, they had that little mini series, and the first one I thought was okay, but then it just got progressively weirder for me, and I just wasn't a big fan. I bought the first couple toys just when they came out, because again, it's like, oh my God, here's something real that
Yeah,
exists,
exactly.
that represents something that I really like. But I wasn't super into the toys. I just kept reading the comics. And then, remember when, and I remember, and I had the older comics because I was able to order out of the back of, I think it was Donatello, the mini series or the micro series had the ad for the glow in the dark T-shirt.
Oh,
And I have that. I still have it. I wore it all the time. It's all cracked and faded, but now I have it in a frame upstairs. I remember, seeing the Dark Horse, not Dark Horse Comics, but Dark Horse, the gaming company, had the little pewter
oh,
miniatures, and
pewter
those they sold at
miniature.
so I had some of those that had got chewed up and destroyed. So I was collecting whatever I could get. Like, when Palladium came out with the RPG books, I got all of those and just poured over the art. Tried to play with my friends, but nobody was into it. But I just liked
Yeah.
reading it and looking at the art. And then Ninja Turtles 8. I mean, I do remember specifically that comic book with Cerebus, right? And I remember really, really loving it. It was like kind of the high point. The books were coming out pretty frequently. And, I remember reading it. And I remember being fascinated by Cerebus because I didn't quite understand who he was, right? That was my first exposure to him. I didn't really understand why the art was so different and how the lettering was different, how he spoke was different. It was just this fascinating thing. And I remember, I was a kid and I was just trying to figure out what all this stuff was, but I really liked it. And then I started reading Cerebus and kind of went back and reread Cerebus up to that point and got myself all caught up. And I read Ninja Turtles and Cerebus pretty consistently through high school. I graduated in '94. When I went away to college, not everything made the move with me, but some comic books did. And I still read Cerebus until it got unreadable, which we can talk about that later if we want. There was a point where you just stop reading it. At least I did. I couldn't read it anymore. It gets very strange. But to get back to the original question, right? Like that Ninja Turtles number 8, because I always liked Masters of the Universe, and I really always liked He-Man and Frazetta, and I loved all of that kind of barbarian fantasy art, and I always played D&D. When I was thinking about art and kind of things that I liked, I really loved that crossover. I love the Ninja Turtles in Cerebus's world. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if the Ninja Turtles or one of them stayed in Astarcian, which is where Cerebus lives in this like fantasy world, and just became like a barbarian mercenary with Cerebus, and they just had a bunch
Oh,
of
yeah.
I'm like that I wanted to see that. And since I'm not going to write a book, I'm not going to draw anything, I'm like, that would be a cool thing to see other people like interpret. And that's where the art came from. I had there's one artist named SVS, Shannon Sepenter, I think is his name. He was the first person I ever asked to do that, and it came out so good that I'm like, I'm going to ask everybody to do this. This is the
That
best
is
thing I've
so
ever
cool.
seen. And it's like, it's been the most amazing thing to collect because it's like such a cool connection with the artist. It's like most artists just get it right off the bat. I tell them what the idea is, and they're like, that fucking rocks. Yeah, let's do that. And they have a really good time with it. And that's kind of what it's all about. I love connecting with artists and knowing that they appreciate doing maybe something different because nobody's asked them for that before.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going back to that time that you're talking about with like the barbarian turtles and all that. Maybe there's a lesser known turtle book that you might be aware of. Oh,
Yeah.
look at that shirt.
So
That's awesome.
that's that picture. I
Mhm.
remember looking at that picture. That was the advertisement for number
Oh,
8 and being like, oh
wow.
my God, that looks so cool. Who's that weird little guy up front? And I always loved it when Eastman and Laird would draw the turtles like in different outfits. Like there'd be pinups in the back of a lot of books,
Of
and
course,
they would
yeah.
be dressed up differently. Anything Goes had them as like colonial space marines, and like there was like them as barbarians and superheroes and stuff. And I just really loved that sort of like dress up and play, um, even from way back then. And now I, dress up for Run Fair and stuff like that, and dress up like a Jedi for Star Wars shows and that
That's
kind of
cool.
thing.
So I was going to ask if you had read the Viking Heroes crossover way
Yeah.
back.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
that's the other one. I'm like, this is almost as obscure.
Yep.
Well, probably
I
more
read it. That was, oh yeah, that was in the back of my head. More recently, there was the little art book that came out of like the Viking, and that really was like, those all looked so good. It was like a bunch of artists did. I forgot who published it, but it was just a fan book of like the Ninja Turtles as Vikings. And I was like, that was also pretty recently. And I'm like, that just looks so cool that we should definitely be seeing barbarian Ninja Turtles. And then the combo with Cerebus just made sense to me.
So before we continue, because that's an amazing answer that you had there. I want to give the listeners kind of like a little background on who Cerebus is.
Sure.
So Cerebus the Aardvark was a series and a character who is an aardvark who's anthropomorphic. It's created by the creator, writer, artist Dave Sims, which ran from December 1977 through March 2004. He's an anthropomorphic aardvark who is sort of a cross between an independent comic. He's a sword and sorcery with experimental sort of combat comic formats of the late 70s into the 80s and beyond. So if you think of that, um, in kind of this era for comics, independents were really kind of out there, and it was concepts that was very non-superhero driven. And you have things like Grendel and Mage and geez, there's so concrete, just it would be like these really strange sort of concepts that are out there and really heady, might be like just a longer version of what you'd find in a heavy metal magazine. And that's kind of like the idea of what independent comics were for a while. And Ninja Turtles kind of trod, the line on that in this issue number 8. Sims was the writer and artist. He was joined in issue 64 by Gerhard, who was the background artist, and some gorgeous art.
Yeah, Gerhard's a genius.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I mean, it's funny because until somebody said that, I was like, oh, I thought that he just did like the finishing and the rough, like Eastman and Laird, and I'm like, oh no, he's doing actually this whole thing. This is fantastic.
Yeah. He would do the main, like the characters and the lettering, and then Gerhard would do all the backgrounds. And I think he even like did the watercolor because the covers were beautiful. The book is an incredible book. I mean, when you think about where it started, because it really predates the Ninja Turtles, right? Published in the late
Yeah,
70s.
and it kind of sets up that whole duotone sort of nature with the black and white 80s. It looks gorgeous in black and white.
Yeah, and Dave Sim being this like huge proponent of self-publishing, there, he was really instrumental in giving people, back then in like the 80s, with the whole like comic creators bill of rights and all this work that they did to try to, have artists retain some ownership of what they did. They raised a lot of money and raised a lot of awareness, and he did amazing things. And just looking at the comic, I don't know if you've read Cerebus, but as the book matures, because it was published, right, he had that record for 300 issues, one long story, longest comic story ever told. I don't think McFarlane beat him because Spawn was created, written and drawn by so many different people, so many different storylines. But Cerebus from 1 to 300 was all Dave Sim, all his idea. Nobody's ever going to do that again.
Not even Stan Sakai?
No, I don't think he's even close to having.
Oh wow!
Well, actually, I don't know how many issues he's published, but it's been stories broken up, and kind of restarts and stuff. But Cerebus, for better or for worse, and it ended terribly. I did not like what happened after about maybe 2/3 of the way, or maybe even half of the way, maybe closer to 2/3. It just, I did not really like where it was going. But anyway, but you can't take away what Dave Sim brought to comics, and his writing, his style, his humor, his lettering is incredible. He's the most amazing letterer ever. Nobody's ever been able to capture. You can hear in your mind the way people speak and their inflections because of how he does the lettering, and it's incredible to look at. And I've never seen anybody do lettering like Dave Sim does.
That's fantastic. I mean, I wish I could pull another great letterer out, but I mean, the only other one that comes to mind is Steve Levine was a really good letterer, but it's not the same. It's like you said, it's performative.
Yeah, it was part of the art for sure, and the conversations and like accents, the way that he would write people's thick accents, like it was just incredible. And so Cerebus was great and mind blowing. I loved it, but again, there's a point where it just it's not the same comic anymore, and we don't have to talk too much about that.
Build on that just a little bit because Sim has said that, and we talked about this before recording, but Sim has said that it's his wish to have the character enter into the public domain upon his death, and he actually bought out Gerhard's ownership in 2006 when he has granted a general license for other creators to use his characters their own works. So, and then this will probably lead into something else that but the last piece here, issue number 8 of the Mirage series has only been collected in a very few volumes of the Mirage collections. TMNT Book 3 in color, which I actually have a very beat up copy of. Ultimate Collection Volume 2, the Works in Color Volume 2, and then there's some single issues that you can get if they'll do it. As of right now, it's not been reprinted by the IDW collections. But in 2023, a Kickstarter campaign was launched to create a remastered version of this issue. It ended up with 608 backers and raised $88,508 for the project when it was finished. And I imagine that you probably got in on that.
Well, I helped create a lot of the variant covers. A lot of them came from my collection. So a good proportion. Yeah, I talked a lot with Waverly while they were doing it, and I helped to kind of corral the artists and reach out to them and get as many of them as we could to consent to do variant covers. And not only that, but I'm just going to grab something from over here. But they created a little compendium, which was a reward for some of the backers. That's called Visions of Turtles 8.
Oh, fantastic!
And these are pieces from the collection. that were printed, and there's a little forward
Oh, there you are.
and
By
there, yeah.
you.
And so I got to write and draw. I drew that little caricature of myself with my
Cool.
little Ninja Turtle
Wow,
and
that is
Cerebus.
badass.
So it was really cool. So I got to be a part of the Kickstarter for this, which was incredible. I got to communicate a little bit with Dave Sim. He's very aware of the collection. He, you can't really, you have to talk to him via like fax. Literally, you have to type out a paper and find a fax machine or some way to fax it to him, because he doesn't do email or anything. It's very strange.
Well, I mean,
But
that's
yeah, but it was cool. That was a really crazy experience, working with Waverly and the Kickstarter. So yeah, I've got a bunch of the variant covers, and then a lot of the art, like I don't know if you can, the Bisley back there, that was one of the covers.
insane. I saw that one. It's
That's
it's
crazy.
crazy because it has that elongated sort of snout that he
Yeah.
had in the 70s, and
Yep, I like
Simon
that.
Bisley is a trip, man. I'm guessing that you got to talk to him at least once or twice, right?
No, that was all done through his rep. I never met Bisley, but if we cross paths and I see him at a convention, I'm definitely gonna be like, you did that Barbarian Digital Cerebus piece
I'm
for me. I
surprised.
freaking love it.
You
Yeah,
might
some
be
of the
like,
artists I
you
talked
might be
to.
like, right? Why don't
Yep.
you go fuck yourself?
Yep,
It's
probably.
like- It's
That's
like,
all right.
thanks, Simon.
Yeah, I'd
That's
be
it.
honored to, sir. Thank you.
It'd be nice if he went to Granite though. I'm surprised he's not.
Yeah, maybe he'll show up. I don't
Well,
know.
it's tough too because he does live in England, so it's. I mean, he was here for I want to say either C2E2 or what used to be Wizard World, and that's where I ran into him,
Hmm.
and I had a good 5-second conversation until he told me where to go and all that. I was
Nice,
just
nice.
like,
That's
well,
yeah, but you know what? Maybe it wouldn't be worth it if he didn't tell you to fuck off.
yeah. I mean, seriously, I consider myself blessed by Lord Bisley. So,
Yeah. No, he's always been one of my favorites, and I was able to get a commission from him. Really, just speaking about like reaching out to artists and stuff, like the collection really took off a lot during COVID. A lot of
oh yeah,
artists who generally wouldn't maybe do mail order commissions now, because there were no cons anymore, everybody seemed to be a little bit more open to doing it. So folks that I followed on Instagram, I would reach out to, and it seemed like a lot more people were willing to do commissions and have them mailed. Some artists were like, I like Bart Sears is one of those kind of ones I talked to, and he's one of my favorites. He did this incredible piece, but it took a long time. But anyway, he told me, he's like, during COVID, I didn't know if I was ever gonna do another convention, so I just took everybody's commissions, or I just said yes to everything. So he got himself a little backed up during COVID, but a lot of artists really were great, and I was able to reach out, and I felt like I was helping to support arts and the artists during COVID, even not going to conventions, by getting these commissions done.
it's probably a
So
big deal for them because I imagine these are not cheap. So I
yeah,
mean,
I mean it depends. It depends on they range. There's a big range.
so speaking of that range, I was going to ask kind of a sillier question, but would Jim Lee be on your your wish list for one day for a Cerebus and
And no, not with the rates, not what he's charging.
yeah, I know,
No way.
$20,000 a pop.
Yeah,
So
and
for a
I'm not
head
that
and
big of a
shoulders.
Jim Lee fan,
Yeah.
and so no, he's not one that I'll tell you who I would potentially spend maybe that kind of money for is Arthur Adams, because he's
Oh wow,
my
yeah,
all-time
he's
favorite.
amazing.
And and he does great Ninja Turtles, and I've been trying to get on his list for years and years and years, and have never been able to. But that's one of the big ones that I still would love to have in the collection, is Arthur Adams. And at Portsmouth Minicon, I got Eastman did a couple headshots for me, so I finally got Kevin Eastman, but I don't have anything from Peter Laird.
I will say this. I know you said Arthur Adams, but you did have Nick Bradshaw on there,
Yeah,
and that was a
mini. Yep.
wonderful piece.
Yes,
And
but that was of the Nick Bradshaw was of just the Ninja Turtles. It wasn't a Barbarian Ninja Turtle in
Yeah.
Cerebus. So I still am trying to get on his commission list. That I just bought when he was selling art through his
Oh,
website.
okay, all right, that's still really
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah, Nick Bradshaw. Yeah, I mean he's like if I can't get Arthur Adams, maybe I can get Nick Bradshaw.
I did meet Art Adams at the last con in C2E2 this year, and
Yeah, he seems super nice. And ever since I was a little kid, he's
he
always
is
been my favorite. And
intense,
he's
and
only gotten
it's
better.
awesome.
I don't understand how he's getting better and better and better. There are plenty of artists who you've liked when you were a kid, and they're still doing good stuff. But Arthur Adams is just he's like a god. I
Yeah,
don't know how
we
he's
had
amazing.
we had like a 10-minute conversation about Barry Windsor Smith and how he didn't like it when the inker was doing his noses, so he
Hmm.
would send his faces in pre-inked. So
which
and all
is like,
that, and we just like started talking. I'm like, this is hilarious. I'm like, this is like how the sausage is made for
yeah,
books back in the 80s. I'm like,
yeah,
this is great.
yeah.
I'm
I
like,
love hearing those. I love
continue.
hearing those stories. Yeah,
It was pretty fun.
yeah.
Who was your first commissioned artist? Who was the first one that kicked this off? I think you may
It
have already
was
mentioned
it was
him.
SVS. His name, he goes by SVS on Instagram. Shannon Sepenter, I think his name is. And it was so good. And I'm not sure. I think what had got me thinking was I was collecting some stuff from Ciro Nieli,
Oh yeah,
um,
Oh
one of
man.
my favorites, and I got him to do just a Cerebus, and the Cerebus was like just kind of rougher and more barbarian looking than sort of I think I was expecting. And I looked at, and I think when I saw that, I'm like, oh well, now I really want to see like a barbarian Ninja Turtle and this kind of like tough badass barbarian Cerebus. And then SVS was the first one that did it.
you want to
And
talk
then
about Stereo? I mean, he absolutely read this issue because they recreated the entire episode without
without,
Cerebus.
yep.
So,
And it was, yeah. So I like when they do that. Like I love Savante Romero is great, and I love the
oh, love him.
storyline. And
Oh
so
my
when
god.
they, yeah, so those episodes of the the Nickelodeon show, I think Savante
Hmm.
Romero was also in the Mirage Studios produced cartoon, the
Yeah, the
2003 or whatever.
2003 series.
Yeah, and so yeah, all those episodes are great. I love Renette. She's one of my favorites. So like anything that has to do with this, I'm all over. And it's just a shame that Dave Sim never licensed Cerebus to be in the Ninja Turtle cartoons or anything. Stan Sakai went along for the ride, right? And they all, they both started at the same time. So that
Every
like
series
Trinity, yeah, that
has had
Usagi, Ninja Turtles,
Usagi.
and Cerebus. I read a ton of Usagi Yojimbo because I also got turned on to him because of the crossovers with the Ninja Turtles, and then found out about Stan Sakai and read a bunch of, got all caught up on Usagi and read that for a really long time. I just always loved those black and white, independent, anthropomorphic, warrior characters were always my favorite.
Yeah, yeah. I don't.
Yeah, you guys get it.
We totally get it, and I wonder about that, Josh. Do you think that there's something about these anthropomorphic characters that it's easier for us to see ourselves in them?
Mm,
No.
that I think 100%. And especially when you look now at like the fans of Ninja Turtles, it's a very diverse group of fans, and I really love that. That yeah, it's like maybe you don't have to worry so much about representation when the main characters are green and could be anybody, and then everybody feels like that's themselves. So yeah, I think for sure that's 100%.
You read into it, and you're like, I'm the blue one, and
Yeah,
Eric's like,
right.
I'm the red one. So that's
Yeah.
Yes,
kind of
sir.
Or me, I'm like, this is because they were black and white. There was no blue one. I'm the angry one, or I'm
okay. Yeah,
Same.
yeah.
it just kind of depends on what issue and who's the
Yep.
angriest, I suppose. So but man, do you own any pages from the original issue number 8? Have you run across
No.
it?
I there was a couple that came up for auction, and I did not get them. I almost thought about recently. The cover came up for sale.
What?
That came from, I forgot whose collection it was. It might have been Corbin, I think, owned it, and then his estate sold a bunch of stuff. And I was for a second I was thinking like, no matter what it takes, I'm going to get it because I have to have it. But then I realized that's a stupid idea, and I still have to retire someday, and I'm not going to do that. Because it went for like $40-something thousand.
Yeah,
Jeez,
uh,
criminy.
yeah.
So it was not worth going into massive amounts of debt. But so no, I don't have any pages. I would love to own them. I have a few pages from a couple older Mirage, but not much. Yeah, I kind of missed that window. I wasn't collecting a lot of art when I was younger, and I wish I had the forethought to maybe buy a couple things when prices were more reasonable. But now I've got some pages from like Tales, and I just am getting probably the best one so far and the oldest. I've just recently got a really nice page. I don't have it yet. I'm going to pick it up at Granite, from number 17 of Mirage, the one that Eric Talbot did,
Very
of
nice.
Leonardo, or sorry, of Michelangelo as like the Ronin with the executioner and behind him, like that. That was one of my favorite issues. Eric Talbot is my personal favorite Ninja Turtle artist. So if I can get anything by him,
Awesome.
I'm super happy.
That's a new one too, because a lot of times we'll get like folks saying it. We've had Jim Lawson before. My personal favorite's Michael Dooney. So
Yeah, I mean they're all great, and I love all of them for
I
their
love
particular style.
Eric's work, you could literally tell that's his artwork from space. That's
Yeah.
how good and different his stuff is. When you see it, you're like, oh, that's Eric Talbot, easily. Or you could go, oh, that's Kevin Eastman. Oh, that's
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
Michael Dooney, Jim
When I was
Lawson.
a kid, I loved picking apart. I was always into the art, and I would always
Oh
pick
yeah,
apart the differences. And I loved looking at all the different artists. And I love Michael Dooney, and he did just of them totally differently. But I really appreciated a lot of his style. And then Jim Lawson, obviously, such a huge, volume of work. And I love his early stuff, and I love his stuff that he's doing now. He's fantastic. But
I
yeah,
always say he is right behind Peter and Kevin. Jim is the most important person in the Turtles verse because he's the one that kept it going. He's
Yeah.
the one that kept everything going, and without him, we wouldn't have had half or even 2/3 of the lore.
Yeah,
It's
and I
so
love
huge.
the stuff that Peter Laird and Lawson did in like the later, volumes of Ninja Turtles, the weird stuff with the Utroms coming to Earth, and I love all of that crazy, crazy sci-fi stuff that they kind of got to do when they were just doing what they liked to do, to do.
It's
So yeah,
funny because we got like what 61 or 62 issues of that second series or something.
62.
Yeah,
I
60.
think
volume 2, yeah, and then volume
volume
4, I
oh,
finally kind of I didn't read it when it came out, but I've read it since then. I really like volume 4. Um,
Volume
it's
4
super
being the
fun.
IDW.
Oh, no. Volume 3 being IDW. No, volume 3 being Image. Volume 4 being the like 30 issues of Peter Laird and Jim Lawson.
Okay,
The
all right, gotcha. Yeah, because
Mirage Volume 4.
I get so confused on this too because there's the Gary Carlson and Frank
Fosco.
Fosco. Yeah.
So that's volume. I think that's pretty. So volume 1, the black and white Mirage. Volume 2, the color Mirage. Volume 3, Image Comics, Frank Fosco with like the Larson covers and stuff like that. And then volume 4, the pretty short run that was a lot kind of published by Mirage, and those last issues that were all like mail order only, and there was
Yep.
only 1,000 of them each. And but I like the storylines a lot in volume 4. And then Tales volume 2 has there's a lot going
I
on
hope
there
that
too.
we get to that on the show where it's like, eventually we get to that because I got to get through the IDW stuff. And I mean, we've got issues 1 through 150 that we'll get through. And I think I'm about a fifth of the way there with everything.
Yeah,
That's
there's a
the
lot.
goal.
There's a lot
Yeah,
to go
is
a
to
through.
get
lot.
to that stuff, which I mean, some of it's harder to find. Like, there's no complete collection for some of the stuff yet.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, there are a couple shady websites that you can go to read pretty much anything if you risk, getting some weird pop-ups on your iPad or
yeah,
whatever. But
I'm aware of these.
I've braved those sites so that I could get caught up and read the issues that are really hard to find. Um, like I love, so how you mentioned how number 8 wasn't reprinted very much, but they made like an alternate version of that comic that was published in some Russian comics that was kind of the alternate number 8. So
No
I
kidding.
had found out about that, and before I could get a hold of one, I was able to read it online, through one of
Oh,
those
that's
websites.
fantastic. I'm gonna have to look for that.
Now,
Speaking of number 8, let's take some of the people who maybe aren't really familiar with this and just kind of get through. So this is a issue that is a first appearance for some characters. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see Renette, who is on my shirt. So Renette is first time in this issue. Savanti Ramiro, first time in this issue, and Lord Simultaneous debuts in this issue.
mhm.
So besides that, you've got Cerebus, Donatello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael. The synopsis goes as such. The story begins as Renette, the apprentice for the Master Lord Simultaneous, borrows her boss's time scepter that contains the sacred sands of time, which would probably be the impetus for the third Turtles movie, by the way.
Yep,
This
the
wand,
scepter is there. Yep.
it allows the wielder to be taken anywhere in time and space by merely wishing to go. Just as Renette grasps the scepter, she is discovered by Simultaneous, who is not happy with her. In fear and desperation, Renette wishes to be sent to New York City circa 1986. As the fates would have it, Renette is transported to the rooftop where the turtles are goofing around. Renette quickly makes friends with the boys when they're suddenly interrupted by an enraged Lord Simultaneous. Renette wishes to be taken any place on Earth before the humans' recorded time. Back in the past, we find Cerebus being awakened by his henchmen, and it seemed that the men are uncomfortable with the Aardvark's plan to invade the
I
foreboding.
can picture all these panels as you're talking about it.
As we're talking, right? Yeah. So as they announce their plan to desert him, Cerberus threatens them and tries to get back to sleep. When Renette and the turtles emerge through a portal with a flash of magical light, as the turtles struggle to their feet to see um, that within the castle, a satyr-like being awakes, alerted to their presence of the time scepter. Leo apologizes to Cerebus and crash landing in his camp, but the Aardvark is in no mood for discussions. They don't get along. As the two prepare for battle, Renette tells them to chill out and offers to explain everything. While Renette tells them the tale of why she's bouncing through time, because she was bored, basically, Savanti Ramiro, the satyr-like man, and his army rush out of the castle to fetch the scepter. Our heroes hear the approaching warriors too late. When they make an effort to escape, Savanti easily overcomes them with magic and takes the time scepter. The wizard and his men retreat back to the fortress and leave our heroes unconscious on the ground, which seems like a mistake, but hey, it was the 80s. A few hours later, the turtles, Renette, and Cerebus find a town and go into a tavern. Cerebus arranges for a mercenary force to attack the castle by dawn by lying to them. The next morning, the hired army attacks the fortress as the turtles, Cerebus and Renette, scale the castle walls. Savanti conjures an army of the undead, which looks really cool, to fight the human attackers as the heroes battle their way into the castle. Eventually, the TMNT and crew make it to Romero's inner chamber, but they're quickly subdued by his magic. As Savanti ponders how to kill them, and Lord Simultaneous shows up. Romero casts a number of spells in order to defeat him, but all of his efforts are in vain. The Time Lord explains the scepter is old technology and then displays the new trans-temporal talisman, the digital comic quartz. It's basically a wristwatch. Simultaneous zaps Romero and then he disappears. He then sends the turtles back home and gives Cerebus the scroll that he came to the castle to get. Finally, Simultaneous returns home, where he punishes Renette by making her dust his vast library. And that is the synopsis for the Mirage issue number 8. So,
Nicely done.
Eric, have you seen that one before? Have you read it?
I have not read it. I wanted to get the I have the issue, but of course, me being me, I don't
I remember
open
you
up.
showing me that you picked it up, so I know you
Yeah,
have.
I
Yeah.
I have it. I haven't even read it. I haven't read a lot of the comic books. Because I don't know what it is with me. Like I just collect them. I need to read them, and especially with the new series coming up. But
But
I
you've
don't know.
seen the episode from the 2012 series because you've watched the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. Like me and my son have absolutely watched the whole thing. He knows more about it than I do. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, I'm gonna have to read up on doing this episode. I'm definitely gonna have to definitely get into it whenever I get some free time to do it. So
it's exciting stuff. Like this is like an epic adventure, and I mean this came out on the like the 80s had this explosion of fantasy where it was like, oh, you're getting Lady Hawk and Conan the Barbarian and like all these other Dragon Slayer. So there's like Excalibur was in 1980. So there was a
yeah,
whole bunch of stuff. I think they had like 2 or 3 Robin Hoods at that point. So it's like, okay, this is in the zeitgeist. Everybody's like, we're ready for some high fantasy stuff. And this would be years before we got Lord of the Rings. So we got what we got, and we had to like it. So but it's fun stuff, and I really enjoyed this aspect of them being pulled out of their element. And for me, turtles are the best when it's what do they do when they're not fighting Shredder and the Foot Clan? Like
Yeah.
take them there, and that's kind of what I really liked about this.
Yeah, they had just gotten back from space, right? So this was another just little adventure, trying to get back to normal. This was right before then things got really serious, right? In like 9 and 10 and 11. So this was it's a great issue. I mean, obviously it's my all-time favorite. I love it. And I love the collaboration between Dave Sim and Eastman and Laird. The art is amazing. It's funny. It's
It
it's
is
clever.
very funny,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And like it's just good. It was everything that I was really digging. So in '86, I was 10 years old. It was perfect for me when I was reading it.
Oh yeah, no,
yeah.
absolutely. And let's see, I had some pieces of trivia here, um, and just some interesting parts about this. Dave Sim was well known in the comics community, and at this time there was a Marvel comic event called Inferno, and there was a character who was a purple demon
Yeah,
named Sim.
Sim. Yeah, that
And
came out. That's quite a bit later. Yeah,
oh,
but
was it? I thought it was 86, 87.
was
So
it that? Because
it,
I remember reading that too, and that was that thing. You bring that up, but I remember seeing that and being like, wait a second. He's
yeah,
got the
yeah,
little black, like vest on. He's got a big long tail and kind of fat feet, and it's like S''YM, and
yep.
I got the joke. And so yeah, whenever that was, it was hilarious. It was
That was
fantastic.
Chris Claremont's
Yeah.
homage to Dave Sim because
Yep.
of
And
all the things that
yeah, amazing Mark Silvestri artwork.
oh
Those
yeah,
were great books.
so good. And not even just that, but you also had Walt Simonson doing it,
Hmm.
and I mean that's where I first got into the X-Men too.
Yeah, was
So
that '86? Yeah. Okay. I mean,
I think it was.
that's
I'm not
incredible.
100%, but I know it was pre-Fall of the Mutants. I think so. If you're an X-Men
Yeah.
fan like I am, but So, Cerebus the Aardvark is a character created by Dave Sim, as we've discussed. This story follows the Michelangelo Micro Series #1, and they all have many smaller adventures in between the story, and it continues in Donatello Micro Series #1. So it's kind of in between Michelangelo and Donatello. That's kind of the chronological order of this.
Mm-hmm.
So the Turtles will meet Cerebus again, non-canonically, in Miami Mice #4. They'll appear alongside him again canonically in the Savage Dragon #41, but that story is later declared non-canon. Non-canon in Image because the Turtles didn't end up being mainstream in Image Comics. So that's
I've never read that book. Now I have to go try to find that.
oh,
Who
that would
did
be
did Eric
Savage
Larson
Dragon.
do the? Yes, was it
Yeah,
Savage Dragon 41?
you bet.
All
Yep.
right, I got to find that now.
Yeah, it'll be easy to find. So he's also crossed over with Hellboy too. So that would be a cool one for the Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Savanti Romero and Renette return in Tales of the TMNT Volume 1, Issue #7. So they'll be back in that one. That's one of the ones that Josh was talking about. Leonardo will begin feeding time and space feeling the time and space after effects from his exposure to Renette's time scepter, beginning in Turtle Soup and Rabbit Stew, which was some of the later kind of eclectic Mirage issues. And this one's for all the horror fans out there. Savanti Romero's name is a play on horror film creators George A. Romero,
Hmm.
Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Tom Savini, the special effects artist. In fact, Savanti is even misspelled Savini on page 19 of the book. So I don't know if anybody caught that one. So,
Yeah, and I think Renette was named after somebody's girlfriend. One of the Mirage guys had a
oh, that is
girlfriend or somebody named Renette. Yeah.
I'll have to look at that. An alternate Cerebus-free first encounter with Renette titled "The Paradox of Chudvosky" was written by Stephen Murphy and drawn by Jim Lawson in 2007 at the behest of Peter Laird, as he believed David Sim would not permit Mirage to reprint the issue. Sim ended up giving Mirage permission, and TMNT #8 was included in the 2009 publication. The TMNT Collected Book Volume 1, thus making need for Murphy Lawson's version obsolete. Steve Murphy, if our listeners remember, is the scribe who did the Turtles Adventures book. So, and he would be under a different pseudonym when he was doing that. So, do you have that one? Do you have anything on this alternate Lawson Murphy take?
Yeah, I bought one of the Russian copies. I have
So
that book.
that's the Russian one. Okay.
Yep.
All right. This issue also contains a bonus sketch of Cerebus and Donatello by Eastman and a Killer Kiwis pinup by Chet Peace. So Chet alert, the tavern that Cerebus takes the Turtles and Renette to is called Chet's Tavern. Additionally, Chet is scrawled onto a dumpster in the Turtles where the Turtles land in. The name Chet is a joke thrown into numerous comics by the Mirage crew because they like the name.
Yeah, just thought it was funny.
It's kind of like a running joke and all that. The issue was originally supposed to be a backup story by Ryan Brown, Rion 2990, but the complications delayed it until TMNT Volume 1, #9, and it wound up not being published there either. So, who knows if that's still out there, but
Yeah, I don't know.
this was originally supposed to contain that backup story, I should say. The 2003 TV series episode Time Travails is loosely based on the issue, but Cerebus does not appear at all. Same thing with the 2012 series. Turtles in Time is loosely based on this issue. It is more than loosely.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Renette's outfit is blue in the first printing, but in her second printing, the outfit is red,
yeah.
which causes
She's always wearing blue. I don't like this red.
yeah,
Renette.
it causes a fair amount of outrage. So anyone who got the NECA figure with her, there was a variant of it that was blue. It was only offered through Walmart, and you could get it that way.
Hmm.
And I have just the red version, which is still great. It's just the blue is best.
Yes, yeah.
So,
I had to track down that. You had to go find one of those little it was a weird thing. You had to buy that little tag, and you had
Yep.
to go online, and they would ship it out to you. What a mess. I hate those.
Yeah, it was crazy. I think I ended up getting one for my buddy Todd and for his birthday because he was an absolute purist when it comes to this. And I mean, it had to have the blue one. So
Yep.
shout out to Todd. Enjoy your blue one.
Yeah, and the fact that they made a Savanti Romero, that NECA made one of those, that just blows my mind. Still, I can't believe it. It's.
I'm
Such a
glad
good
that
toy.
they did,
Yeah.
and I'm waiting for the announcement that they're gonna get us a complete Carnage. because
Oh
that's
yeah,
the next one that we need. So
yeah.
Mirage, Complete Carnage. Michael Dooney created that with a
Oh, yeah.
character
And
called
and then you got to have you do a 2-pack with Radical, right?
Absolutely. Like, yeah, they won't though. They'll
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. They're doing everything. I cannot believe some of the stuff that
Yeah,
they're
I
doing.
just saw
Hmm.
some
So
fun
yeah,
stuff.
I think that they might. And when I was at a PowerCon, which is like a He-Man and sort of toy convention, and NECA was there, and I'm like, what are the odds of Dave Sim just allowing you guys to make a Cerebus? Because you've got Savanti, you've got Renette, and he kind of gave me like a little smile, like you never know. So I feel like they have been trying to actually get a Cerebus action figure
It seems like there's
done.
people there that really like this stuff, and just probably from talking to some of the folks that we know in some of these turtle groups, like they know and they're paying attention to what
Yeah, they know
we
what we
want,
want. Yeah,
and they know we're gonna buy it no matter
yeah.
what. So,
But
um,
yeah, yeah.
so and being a Motu fan, as we call it, what's your opinion then of the Masters of the Universe crossover that's coming up? Which is
I love it when I saw those weird like it's perfect for me. I mean, I loved it. I loved when Freddie Williams shared his designs of that crossover before all of this. I bought a couple of the pieces. So yeah, I mean they are barbarian Ninja Turtles, and it's in this kind of like fantasy and magic world. So yeah, I am very excited about the new comic. I have bought all the toys. I like it. At
nice.
least the ones that are like of the Ninja Turtles. I don't necessarily do all the supporting cast or
Like, I don't
I'm
need
not a
this purple
completist.
He-Man. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's good. Do you have any conditions for when you do a commission? Is there anything that has to be on it, or anything that you don't want on it specifically? Like what do you give your artists?
I will. So the the ask is just like I mentioned before. Ninja Turtle gets transported to Cerebus's fantasy world, and they're adventuring together. So however you want to do that, but I will say to them, I'm a much bigger fan of the Mirage era Turtles than the cartoon or toys. So I generally don't like the letters on the belts, and I generally don't like the colored. Like if it was my up to me, but that's only if they sort of ask, or if they show me a rough, then I'll ask no letters on the belt because that's just not, those aren't my turtles. But I really let them. I just say I leave it to them. I want to see the artist's interpretation of that.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff in there, and
Yeah.
there's some really different stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, some stuff probably appeals to you, and then some stuff would probably appeal to me. I mean, it's all great, but it's like, oh wow, that was cool, and I really like that take.
Yeah, and the ones that like you can tell which ones like the cartoon or the toys because they'll want to do like a Bebop thing or a Rocksteady thing, or they'll want to put April in there somewhere. But like if I'm being like completely pure, it's like a Ninja Turtle or more than one with Cerebus, and the supporting characters would be either Renette or Red Sophia, who is basically like a Red Sonja ripoff that was in the early Cerebus comics. Um, but I don't mind when they draw from other things, put that stuff in there. But there's no Bebop and Rocksteady in my Ninja Turtles canon.
That was my next question was that, is that Red Sophia in there, or is it Red Sonja? So
It's Red
that
Sophia.
answers it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Dug a little bit into that, so that's
Yep.
that's
Yep.
good. What about favorites in your collection? And without like, I don't know, is there anything that jumps out at you and be like, hey, this thing is amazing? Because obviously
Well,
you've got the Simon Bisley
yeah, the
behind.
ones that are on the wall behind me, the John Deere Dyer and the Bisley, I have up on the wall. Those two I love. Just I mean, the big painted pieces are so dramatic and like the Bisley, my wife allows me to have that one in the living room. That's why I got a nice fancy frame for
Oh,
it.
it's awesome.
All most of the other stuff is in portfolios. No, I mean obviously any of this stuff from the old Mirage folks, like the Jim Lawson piece is incredible. The Mark Bodie piece is incredible. But obviously the tattoo by Eric Talbot is one of my favorites because that one I can never get rid of. That was his contribution so far to the collection. As I went out and got tattooed by him because he's a tattoo artist now.
Yep.
So
Wow, that's cool.
my favorite Ninja Turtle artist, and I collect tattoos too. So that when I learned that he was a tattooer, I was hatching a plan already. Like I got to go out and I got to get a piece by Eric Talbot. This is going to be incredible.
That's
And then
crazy.
we decided to do the Barbarian Ninja Turtle and Cerebus, and so that's obviously one of my favorites because it's going to be on me forever. It's hard for me to pick favorites. I do like it when artists that aren't known for doing Ninja Turtles, and like a lot of like fantasy artists, like maybe Conan artists, like Rob De La Torre, who's doing Conan books now, who's basically like the second coming of John Buscema. He did
Oh,
this
cool.
crazy piece that's just so different and interesting. The SVS piece because it was the first. I love any of the pieces that got turned into covers, like the Cyranielli piece is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I have too many. I have too many. I don't have favorites. I love them all for, it's like your kids or my dogs, right? I love them all for
I
different
like
reasons.
one of the first things that got me into the Kickstarter was that Brooks had done some of the art for the
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter, and just looking at it, I'm like, I know that. I have a Hellboy that he did like in 2017 or something like that, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my god, like I got this for $75 back in the day. I'm like, I can't even imagine that now. You know,
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it-
I mean, yeah, so many good artists, and that's the thing. Like, basically, if I artists that I pay attention to on Instagram, if they have
yeah, yeah.
opportunities for commissions, I'm asking anybody
I think I
to
saw
contribute
Jared
to this.
Cullum in there, and I was like, oh wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. He did. Yeah. Really great stuff. Yeah. I love them all. I mean, obviously, and there's too many to talk about. There's now
Oh,
literally
absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
hundreds of them now. So they're all on. I've got them. I've got a Facebook page where I share sort of my latest scans, and I post on my Instagram. But I have the Comic Art Fans, which I keep updated. I mean, I'm just kind of going through now. It's the let's see. I don't know. There's too many. There's too many.
I know there's too many. I was going to ask you about this because you talked about this before. You recently got a chance to go to the Portsmouth MiniCon.
I
Can you
did.
talk
Yeah.
about your
Oh
experience
my
there and just
Yeah,
like
it was
kind of
incredible.
what you got done?
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, that was one of those things that like you knew the 40th was coming. I already had sort of made plans to go to Granite, and then when they said that this Portsmouth MiniCon was happening, I was like, I definitely have to be there. And one of the things I'll tell you the sort of whole story of how I planned to do this. One of the things I loved, and because I used to read Comic Buyer's Guide when I was a kid, right, the
Yes.
newspaper,
Yeah.
and I would just pour over that stuff. And I love the old ads for Ninja Turtles that showed up in there. And I was, there's I don't know if you can imagine or remember the ad for the first comic before it came out. It was like April of '84 in Comic Buyer's Guide, a full page ad. And it's a great ad. It's got the comic book cover in the middle and like some panels from the comic on the outside, and on the bottom it's got this little like, hey, coming to Portsmouth MiniCon, May whatever 1984, come and get your Ninja Turtles comics, only $2, or you can mail away. And I just love that ad, and just something so big started from something so small.
And it
So
found its audience, which is
yeah,
the
for sure,
crazy.
because it was good. But when I had this idea, of making basically a frame for my Ninja Turtles #1 that recreated the ad, so that instead of that black and white picture of the cover, the actual cover of the comic would poke through. And I got a mat made, and I had a wood burning artist create all the little wood tiles around it. And I brought the mat with me, and I had all the original Mirage guys sign the outside of the mat. So that's what I carried with
Wow.
me to Portsmouth. I'll grab it because I've got it right here.
This is insane because I've seen this.
I don't know
Oh,
if you can
wow.
see.
Oh my gosh.
So that's my slab #1.
Wow.
I'll tell you a story about my #1 if you want to hear it. But then
What
around, and
printing
then
is it?
it's a first print,
Oh my gosh. What's the grade on it?
9.4.
Oh my
Wow.
So
gosh.
it's a retirement
Yeah.
account, one of my
That
diversified
I
investments.
love that piece. I am
Oh
freaking.
my
So it's
god.
got, yeah, the
I
only
have an issue
one.
one, but
Yeah,
it's only the second print. So
yeah. So I got everybody. The only person who, because he didn't show up, unfortunately, I don't have AC Farley.
Yep.
Is the one Mirage guy that I still want to get.
And we hope that he decides to come to Granite this year.
Yep. Yep.
I do text him every now and then. So
Yeah, if I hear, I mean, I'm thinking about maybe I'll bring it with me, because I have another one that I'm delivering to Jim Lawson because he really really liked it, and so
oh, cool.
he's getting one of these. So I may bring it just in case somebody shows up, and I can add another autograph to it, because I tried to keep it just to the Mirage Studios original
yeah,
kind of
I feel
folks.
you on that.
You've met a lot of artists, right? Like I imagine met and correct me if I'm wrong here if I'm off base,
Mm.
but is Jim Lawson not the nicest person?
He's the nicest
Like
guy
I
in
mean,
the
just
world.
like
Yeah.
he takes it to like this other level. You're like, I did not expect him to be that generous.
Yeah,
And,
he looks at you like you've known him your whole life, and he's a beautiful human being.
yeah,
They're
that's
all the Mirage guys, you know.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
And it was so nice. I mean, that was what was so cool about the MiniCon, is that it was just Ninja Turtles, and there were so many of those heroes of mine, right? I mean, going back to when I was a kid, so the artists that were there, everybody who contributed, and just getting to just kind of, it's small, so you can kind of chit chat with folks and you can hang out, and getting them, they all loved this. They were so happy that I brought it around. They signed it. We took pictures with it. and meeting other fans, obviously, that Ninja Turtles is really important, and fans from different eras. Like that's the coolest thing, is that
Yes.
my favorite Ninja Turtles are not necessarily somebody else's favorite Ninja Turtles, but we all have a really good time when we're together, just just enjoying all of it.
It's hard for a fandom to do that, especially with something like Star Wars or even like Spider-Man, Avengers, like all that. You've all got your kind of continuities and such, and they tend to like just, oh, we're just going to reboot it. With Turtles, it's like every time you do it, it's completely different. You'll always have a City at War story. You'll always have, oh, this is what happens with the
they always go to
Like,
Northampton. You got to have
always
them
go
go
to
to
Northampton. They
the
have to. Like there's always this kind of stuff, but every time it's different. And maybe like the really different takes some people don't get into, like Rise,
Yep.
because they didn't quite get there yet. But
Yeah.
Rise fans are just as valid as everybody else.
Yeah, and I tried watching Rise. I didn't make it very far.
Yeah.
I tried to just sort of keep up with it, but I appreciate it for what it is,
The
and
movie
and I'm
was
really
good.
happy they keep making it.
that
Mutant
movie
Mayhem
was good.
the Rise movie
Yeah,
with Casey Jones.
I love Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah,
I don't even
my
care. I
Oh,
freaking love
oh,
it.
Mutant Mayhem was fantastic. Yeah, I
It's
loved
so
it.
good.
Yeah. Well,
Loved it.
Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah,
Oh,
there you
yeah,
go.
Mutant Mayhem
That's the whole
shirt.
thing.
Yeah,
My
but people
son,
had a problem with that too, because it was a different take on it. But
yeah,
I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So I'm
that's
looking
the whole
forward to the
thing.
new show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's all
Mutant
good.
Mayhem was a little sketchy because Seth Rogen was doing it, and I mean, when you think of Seth Rogen, you think about Knocked Up, Sausage Party, stuff like that.
I don't ever think about Sausage Party. Not ever, and I've seen it. Yeah.
I mean, you think about movies like him and like his background and all this other stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, the first time I seen the little snippet, the little picture of them, I'm like,
it's weird looking. It looks a little weird.
And after Preacher came out too, I know there was a kind of a lot of people that were like, well, this isn't anything like the comic, what about that? But then you've got The Boys and Invincible that come out and really knock it out of the park. I was confident that he was going to do a good job. So I actually thought that he might go a little far based on what was in Invincible and The Boys, but but it was good. I think that it's good. It's stylish. It's got its own style, so you can tell that Bebop or that Rocksteady from any other version. And you know that.
Yeah,
So.
it was just fun. It was a fun movie. I loved it. I laughed.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed it. I thought the voice actors, had such a great chemistry, and they just sounded like they were having such a good time that I couldn't help but be like, I get it. Like I really enjoyed it, and I love that they recreated it for new audiences.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, there's not that many properties that have the legs that Ninja Turtle has, and they've been so well able to, just reinvent it for new generations. It's great.
So I'm going to get a little heavy on us because it's something that it's kind of like the elephant in the room. Like we have to discuss it. It's like how do you reconcile the idea that it's like Cerebus is a great character that's existed since 1977, and you talked about not really liking the way that it ends and all that. Dave Sim has been kind of like a problematic character in comics and stuff like that for some of the things that he said. I mean, notable as kind of like he went through a period of I don't want to say misogyny, but I'll say like straight up like women hating.
Yeah.
It was like really kind of crazy. Like how do you deal with that as a fan of this and all that?
So I try to just remain a fan of the comics, and it's kind of, look, I feel I'm very fortunate that I am able to do this. I have the the privilege of being able to look at this thing through rose-colored glasses and just sort of focus on the stuff that I like. But I am fully aware that not everybody has that same relationship with the character and the history, and I get that, and I totally respect it. But I do try to separate the art from the artist, and what Dave Sim sort of did in his later career, where the book went and where especially he went. It's funny because like I remember reading it when I was a kid and really enjoying the humor and thinking stuff was funny. But even when I was young, I thought that it was satire, right? I mean, there are storylines that have to do with this civilization basically of just women who are taking over cities and stuff. And I thought it was satire, the way that it was played, the way that the male characters reacted, because it was kind of played for laughs in certain parts, although it did end up getting really, really serious. But when I realized that Dave Sim wasn't joking about that stuff and he really did believe it and that it wasn't satire, that I had a really huge problem with that. And I sort of stopped reading it, not just because of my realization that he was who he was. And he was really obvious about it. I mean, he would write these really, really long letters in Cerebus kind of explaining his thoughts about religion and politics. And, gender relationships and stuff, and very, very difficult stuff. And then at some point you're just like, I'm not reading this anymore. This is just not for me.
It's weird because it becomes sort of like a printed manifesto. And
Oh,
it's
for sure.
like
I mean,
this is
he
stuff that
he's rewriting the Bible. He's doing weird shit. And then he ended up becoming like, I know that he had issues with untreated mental illness because he had like these mental breakdowns and was in a
yeah.
hospital, from what I understand. He ended up moving out into like literally the middle of nowhere with like no internet connection, a phone line, and a fax machine is how he communicated with the outside world, becoming like this like ascetic who basically like starved himself and just did nothing but write about religion and his thoughts on the universe and men and women and all this really, really kind of sick stuff. And I'm not a fan of that, you know.
And you
But
think about like his contemporaries of the time, Frank Miller, Alan Moore. Alan Moore wrote Cerebus stories, you know, like he wrote at least one of them. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I could see the pressure of that era getting to all of them. You know,
yeah, I
Frank
mean,
Miller has
yeah,
a documentary pick that just
hmm
came out about this. So
hmm
and that's probably the only way that I'll compare those two. But yeah, it's kind of
it's
interesting.
weird. It's an interesting story. But I just, for me, I just think about the comics, you know, but I still can't deny how good the art was, how good the storytelling was, how good that comic was when it was good. And then and just I think Cerebus is a great looking character. I think
Yeah,
the
I
character,
agree.
like the Ninja Turtles, they are simple, they're very emotive. It's just this cool juxtaposition of a weird, cute looking animal with huge swords and armor and like all that stuff. And then I think he looks great with Ninja Turtles. I just love the difference in size and the different personality. And I've chosen to kind of just keep focusing on the stuff that I like and blissfully ignore the stuff that is really horrible. But I totally get it and I've had artists that I've asked to do commissions and like, I'm not going to do Cerebus. What else can we do? And then I'll ask for Usagi instead, you
Which
know,
is
which
awesome.
is great. Yeah. And which is also great. And Stan Sakai never hurt a fly.
No,
Also one of the
never.
nice
Yeah.
people in the world. Um,
I can't wait to be him this year. So that'll
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
be
we're gonna be able.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
got
gonna
his
be there
40th
this
coming
year.
up too. Yeah, so I don't have Stan Sakai. I think that would be amazing. I think talking about other like really influential, great comics of like the 80s. Sergio Aragones did an incredible piece for me. So
oh
I've
my
got
god, did he?
that has
Yes.
Gru and Usagi and a Ninja Turtle, Leonardo, and Cerebus fighting this one of his big hordes of invaders, and it's so good. So another one of my favorites is the Sergio piece.
Who was on your bucket list? Like maybe somebody that you haven't gotten yet, someone that you never got, besides Art Adams and
So
all that.
Peter Laird for
Peter Laird.
sure.
Okay. He would
Arthur
totally
Adams.
be into that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think he does that kind of stuff, unfortunately. But maybe I can try to get him to do a headshot. Like I didn't think I've been trying to get Kevin Eastman to do something, and I would love to get a more rendered piece by Eastman. But for now, the two headshots are gonna do. Um, I still want to get a piece on paper from Eric Talbot. I have the tattoo, which is fantastic, but obviously his art is so amazing that I still want to get a Talbot piece. And I've been on his list for a very long time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure who else. I mean, really anybody that had sort of any overlap with the Turtles in the 80s, any of the artists that did, like, I mean, um, unfortunately, Steve Bissette just left. Unfortunately, I never got Steve Bissette to do it. Rick Veitch would be a really, really cool
Oh
one.
yeah, he passed as
Um,
well. Yep.
and then, another big one. Like, I mean, I would, if AC Farley did something like a painting, that would be insane because his painted covers of those collected books, those are seared into my brain. Some of the best stuff ever.
I tell people that maybe 1989 Mirage calendar, if you remember
Mhm.
that,
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
is
Yeah.
that is what made me love art. Like just art as a general, like color, composition, everything, and a huge part of that is AC Farley's work.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Those covers.
the
So good.
way he did Splinter, the way he did the turtles, like sitting in the forest with like the like traditional Japanese hats on and
Yep.
stuff. I'm like, oh, the
Yeah. His
cover
turtles were
detail
incredible. Yeah.
so good. I have actually a poster of his hanging up right above
Mhm.
my wall. So,
Yeah.
cool
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Before I started collecting this, other things that I would ask artists a lot were like cover recreations. Like I love the cover of number one, and I liked seeing other
Oh
artists
yeah.
sort of interpretation of that. But one of the best Barbarian era of art collecting was Ciro Nieli did a recreation of that cover of the first collected series where they're in the sewer and there's the ladder and they're kind of all looking back at the camera. And Casey's there and April and Splinter. The first collected issue, that AC
Yep.
Farley painting. And so Ciro did this incredible piece of his turtles,
Wow.
recreating that, and that's one of my favorites.
It's gorgeous. I hope that he makes it out this year. I don't know if he's.
Oh yeah, I would love to meet him. I've talked to him, emailed and just kind of messaged and stuff. Cause see, I've got a few pieces by him, and I love all of his. He did so many great like homages to like Mirage era covers, used with his Ninja Turtles, like the one where they're fighting the Triceratons in the arena. Such great stuff. I love his stuff.
That's so cool. When it comes to other characters and all that, we talked a little bit about Usagi and all that. Have you considered any other characters that you would add into something like another Vikingized version of another character, maybe, or barbarianized, I should say?
Yeah, no, I mean I'm open to other folks making it in to the to the cut. But like to me, this is kind of like I got this like little storyline in my head, and this is what it is. I mean, I do collect
I like
other
that. Yeah.
art, other characters that I collect. I mean, I really like Colossus is my favorite X-Men, so I sometimes will
Cool.
get pieces of Colossus. I really love Lobo, crazy '90s Lobo, DC Comics Lobo, and then Beta
I
Ray
just saw
Bill.
that big omnibus that came out, the big
Yeah, I need to
hardcover
get
one.
that. I need to
Yeah,
get that.
I was thinking that. I was like, oh man, yeah.
Lobo's awesome, and then Beta Ray Bill is another one of my just favorite characters, and I love seeing artists' interpretation of Beta Ray Bill.
Now I know why you and I have that same shirt. So that turtle store, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome, man. So in terms of this, we're gonna have a link to your comic art fans up there, so we can send people there to go take a look. I
Cool,
saw
yeah.
there was like 344 entries or something like, and I went through every single one just looking at them. I'm like, oh my god, this is
Yeah, and
great.
that's just one there's other galleries too, right? So that's just the Barbarian Ninja Turtle and Cerebus, and then there's a whole gallery of just Ninja Turtle and Cerebus and Usagi and other sort of Ninja Turtle related things that aren't the barbarianized
I've just
versions
scratched
of
the
them.
surface, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yep. And
Holy
then I've got a
crap.
bunch of Conan stuff, a bunch of He-Man stuff, and then a bunch of just like other superhero stuff. There's a lot. There's a lot. I've been collecting art since I was a kid. I mean, some of my earliest pieces, I'm one of those. It's like I remember when I was a kid, you could go to comic convention, and Arthur Adams would just draw a headshot for free on a backing board.
Oh
And I
yeah.
have this old Colossus that he did for me in like 1992. I've got this, Walt Simonson Thor that he did for me for free. Like I was a kid just going hanging out with artists. I have this amazing Mark Silvestri Colossus that he did for me.
Oh,
It may have cost me maybe $25 a full Colossus, and then I have a little headshot of Wolverine on a separate like flyer for the convention that he did for me, and I kind of frame those together. When I was a kid, I mean, I was 8 years or 10 years old, 8 years old during some of that
that's
stuff.
right in the sweet spot too. Like if you think about it, when you're like you were saying you're a kid and all that, that's the sweet spot right there of when he was doing the Outback X-Men and all that.
Yeah,
So,
he was so good, and he was super nice. I hung out. I used to go to the comic convention and just hang out at the artists where they were drawing, and just hang out with them all day and just watch them draw. I would go
that's
get
what we
them a
do.
soda if they were thirsty. I would meet their wives, just kind of hang out and just be in awe of what they were doing.
All right, so not necessarily turtles related. Do you have a good con story about something like that, like with an artist that you were talking with?
Yeah, I mean that hanging out with Mark Silvestri, that was just one of the best moments of my life. It was just so cool hanging out with him, and he was super nice. And I would just stand there and watch him draw, and he did that art for me, and I, like again, I remember getting him a soda because and I like just went back and got him something to drink, and I kind of talked to it was his wife or his girlfriend or somebody at the time, but he was just super cool. I mean, I met
too.
yeah.
Like wait, you're like,
Yeah.
oh crap, he's pretty tall. So
Yeah, it was just and super nice guy. I got to meet Arthur Adams when I was a kid, who was my favorite at that time too. And I remember coming up with a stack, everything he had ever drawn. I mean, any little, Captain Carrot pinup or any little cover or anything. I was going through long boxes when I was a kid, and I was always trying to find something of some artist that I liked, and I kind of would, had all that stuff. And he signed everything for me, so he was super super nice. I met Dave Sim when I was a kid at a convention. He was super nice. I never met when I was a kid. I never got to meet Eastman and Laird. I'd never met Eastman until MiniCon last year, or a couple months ago. It's the first time I ever met
no
Kevin Eastman.
kidding. Wow.
Just
Okay.
never, I was in Florida when I was a kid, and then I was in Portland, Oregon, when I started after school, when I started practicing, and he was never at a convention when I was anywhere nearby. I was always jealous of folks that lived in New England, because that's just where all of them were.
I grew up, so this is a funny part. I grew up in Connecticut, and from where I grew up, like there's a ton of artists that were like Jim Aparo lived in my town and stuff like that. And it's so funny because when I was talking to Steve Levine, he's like, "Oh yeah, Kevin and I rented a house in Torrington and all that." I'm like, "What?
So
How
you
did
were
I
right
not
there.
know this?" And I was like, "Yeah, exactly." And I'm like, "Oh man, how did I miss them?" You
Yeah.
know, and we didn't really have cons like there was like Rhode Island Con and there was some stuff, but there wasn't really like a ton of Connecticut cons.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everything was like Massachusetts, New Hampshire
Yeah.
area, kind of like that. So I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. You just had to get lucky. I mean, I was really fortunate that where I lived in Miami, we had, in the late 80s, early 90s, some really great artists came through. This one little, it's like a Howard Johnson's convention center. It was right down, kind of down the street from where I lived. And, we would go to conventions every year, and there would always be somebody incredible. Was there like Matt Wagner, Evan
oh wow,
Orkin? I knew at one point I had an Eric Larson Wolverine that he did for me, and I don't know what happened to that one. I may have traded it when I was a kid for something else. I wish I still had that. um, but
I'm
I
gonna
have,
go out on a limb here and say that my favorite Spider-Man artist is Eric Larson. So,
yeah.
and I mean, people can contest that. I would
Mm.
say
So
second is
fun
Mark
stuff.
Bagley,
That's another
but
one of my
yeah.
one of my favorite, another memory of going to a convention and hanging out with the artists was watching Eric Larson draw. Have you ever seen him draw? He holds his pencil in a very, very unusual way, and it was just weird. It was interesting and it was fascinating to watch. He has a totally different, way that he draws than anybody else I've ever seen in my entire life. So if you've never seen him draw, I don't know if he still draws that way, but it was really
Oh,
cool to
wow.
watch.
Is he righty or lefty?
I think he might be a lefty, and he might have been one of those lefties that was trying to hold his pencil in a way that he would have his hand on the
Yeah, like
right
I
side,
know lefties will like be all like
but he
curled
was
up
like he
like
was
that.
all upside down. It was
Yeah.
very interesting. So I
Oh,
remember that. I
that's so
remember really
funny.
enjoying that when I was a kid.
That's like Jimi Hendrix playing guitar, right? So he like flipped the guitar backwards and like changed the strings on it because he was playing it lefty, but it was a
Oh,
righty
he was playing the
guitar.
wrong. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You just make do with what you've got. So yeah, he just adapted, right? And that's
oh,
just the
that's
way he did
crazy.
it. But he was super nice. Yeah, no, I've got lots of memories of being a comic book nerd when I was, young. And really fortunate that I got to go to some conventions and collect some little bits of art, even then. And then obviously going away to college and then sort of starting my career, I didn't keep up with stuff. So I missed all of volume 4 because I was not reading Ninja Turtles. I wish I hadn't. I wish I had kept up with it. I wish I had bought more art a few years ago. But now, I don't have kids, so this is what I choose to do,
I think it's awesome. I
is
think it's so
collect this
cool.
stuff. And I've been able to make now, through Instagram and just kind of the way the world is now, everything is so small. I've made some, incredible connections with artists that are just, the world is just full of so many amazing artists. And Instagram, my feed is full of incredible stuff. And it's been so cool to be able to connect with artists. And I like that I've kind of pared it down, like, to just this thing that, and that way I know what I'm, talk to them about it. I get them interested, I show them other pieces, and most artists get really, really jazzed to do it. They're all excited about it. Some artists are like, I've seen some of your stuff and I want to, my friend did this one. I want to do one better than my friend.
Yeah.
I get a lot of that, which is always great. I'm like,
One
yeah,
up
I
and
love
freaking
it.
go crazy.
I've seen like a lot of my favorites. I'll call them the Granite Crew. You got Mike Ruth. You've got so Stephen King is on there.
Yep.
Camillo
Yep.
Petratonio.
Hugh.
Chris Vance, Hugh Rookwood. I think Hugh. You got Hugh, right? Hugh
Yeah, I've
Rookwood.
got all of those guys.
I,
Yeah.
I love those guys, and
Yeah.
and some of my favorites to watch and all that, and just absolutely love that stuff. And I'm like, oh wow, he's got a Vance in here, cool. And
Yeah. I got,
Stephen King,
yeah.
man, he did it, and it looked like it would be pulled from like a pinup out of that book from 1977. So, and I'm like, that duotone pixelation that he does is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's really good.
I really enjoy that. Now is the time of show where I usually kick over to Eric, where he is definitely going to ask you a question or two about
Okay.
uh,
Pizza.
about
Oh,
pizza.
yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Fine.
Yeah. And I
But
These
do,
are
I
right.
have all my portfolios over here. If there's anything else that you want to see, or if you want to go
I
through more,
love.
I
I'm
do.
sorry, but like I am like I'm not even gonna lie to you. Mike Ruth has really, really got me. He's been drawing the Barbarian Turtles,
Yeah. Yep.
and I've
Oh, yeah.
I fell in love with them
Yeah, he had a really fun time, and then I've talked to him and saw the stuff that he's been doing, and he just,
Yeah,
he's been really enjoying it and doing it more, and I love
yeah,
it. It's so cool to
yeah.
see what he's been doing. I freaking love it.
I told him on one of my last comics that he did, I wanted the Barbarian, but he ended up doing the one Ronin one
Mm-hmm.
for issue 150. Did you remember he like covered one of the Michelangelo as the Ronin?
Oh, the
That's the
circle.
one
Yeah.
that
Yep.
yeah that
Mhm.
on issue 150. That's mine.
Nice,
That's the one
nice.
that he did.
Awesome.
But so is it a crime or is it not a crime to have pineapple on pizza? Are you a
It
pineapple?
is not a crime. Look, I think people need to get over this.
Yes.
Look, sweet and savory things go together all the time. I think it's hilarious that people don't like pineapple on a pizza, especially like Italians. I mean, they wrap prosciutto around melon, right? It's the
Or
same thing. You
dates,
got sweet,
right?
yep,
I've never had
dates,
it on melon,
yeah,
but
bacon and date, yeah.
okay.
So no pizza, like it's not normally what I order, but I appreciate it. I'm fine. But I also will eat literally anything.
Okay, what about pizza on pineapple?
Pizza on pineapple, like a little like a toaster pizza on a tiny piece of pineapple. I would eat that, sure. Like tomato.
That's a
Let's
first
do it. Let's
there.
yeah.
That is the first.
Yeah,
I was not
like
expecting.
a pizza bagel, but a little piece of pineapple with tomato sauce and cheese on it.
I'd eat that.
Yeah, that's
I
actually
mean,
I'm
you think
sorry,
about it. How good would that
I had
be?
to go
no.
there.
That's like you get like a
I
keto
had to.
friendly pizza that
It
way.
would be,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's do
You
it.
grill it up, maybe get like some char marks on like a
Do it.
ring of
Do
pineapple
it.
or something.
That
Del
might change
Monte
your
Gold.
mind. That might change
Yeah.
your mind. Go all in on the
He's
pineapple.
he's actually Josh. He's actually the resident chef here. So I cook and I cook daily and all that. But Eric is the one that actually makes like fine cuisine, and he's a
Oh,
trained
nice.
chef. So
And you don't
um,
like pineapple on pizza? It's a food crime.
What? Okay, so a little backstory
I
about
would say
that.
no. So
Okay, I don't like pineapple. Okay, there's a couple reasons why. My mom, she was allergic to pineapple, so
oh,
she
Okay.
I mean, I get it.
so you know
My
that was
wife's
kind of
allergic
one
to
of the
coconut.
things. But I'm not even gonna lie. Whenever I was in the military, one of the things that I had to do, I had to cut a lot of pineapple.
Okay, so
And
you're reverse.
back in the day, there wasn't really a big thing of wearing gloves for food service. My hands were
Oh,
clean. Don't get me wrong, but like we didn't have gloves.
Mhm.
So whenever you're cutting about 20, 30 pineapples in the morning, your hands tend to get, a little raw from the acid.
digested
Sure,
by
sure.
acid.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Tenderized.
So, it was kind of like one of those things is like, I hate pineapple. I don't care what people say about pineapple. Me and pineapple do not like each
Yeah,
other. So, I mean,
but you're yeah. This is
now everybody gets a better understanding of
yeah.
my
So
But
this
yeah,
is
towards
the
pineapple.
origin story of how Eric became an anti-pineapple supervillain. So so that's so then Josh, are you a fan of pizza? And if so, what would be your go-to pizza topping of choice?
my favorite is just a classic, like a margarita kind of.
Oh yeah,
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 like a
margarita's great.
yeah, like going to like you know a stone pizza oven place, like a classic Italian style, thin crust, charred on the bottom, chewy, tomato, mozzarella, basil. That's my favorite classic kind of thing. But again, I will eat anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great one. So I
And that's if I'm trying out a new place, that's my go-to. You try to keep like a something you compare to other places.
Yeah.
So that yeah, a margarita pizza, that's my favorite.
that's great. What else you got there, Eric? That's usually the big one. I think did we ask him about his favorite? You want to tackle that one?
What is favorite pizza?
No, his favorite
Oh,
turtle.
oh yeah. What is your favorite turtle?
But it was always Raphael. Raphael was always my favorite. I just sort of that like anti-hero. I liked Wolverine when I was a
Yeah.
kid and like read the X-Men. I think as I'm getting older, I think I probably now understand Leonardo better. Um,
Yeah.
but and especially now when I tell if an artist is going to ask me which turtle potentially for the art, right, the barbarian, I always see either Leonardo or Raphael to me make
Yeah,
the
one or
most
the other.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah, like Leonardo is kind of like your swordsman, Raphael is your like classic barbarian,
Yeah.
go crazy. But I really like when people take, like, usually if they're going to do Donatello, he's like doing magic or something, which is awesome. And then if they'll do Michelangelo and he's just kind of like leaping in with like a bunch of knives or something like that, like a rogue. So it's cool how the turtles will be like
Yeah.
in little D&D classes. um so that's
Yeah.
always fun to see. But yeah, Raph is he's my favorite. I got to stick with the
That's
original.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This has been an absolute blast. I think that you have a lot more stories that we even scratch the surface of, but alas, we are out of time.
Well,
So
thank you for having
what I'm
me.
going to do is I'm going to have a link to the gallery that you sent me in the show notes, so anybody watching on either YouTube could check it out there, and anybody who's listening could definitely
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah, and I mean, and I share a ton of stuff on Instagram and Facebook too, and not just the Ninja Turtle art, but anytime I'll get any kind of piece of art or something, I'll share it usually on Instagram and Facebook, and other things that I collect like the swords, and I just went to this knife making workshop last weekend, and I made a knife by hand. It was incredible. It's such a cool experience. So I try to share.
What kind of knife was that, by the way? Because I noticed it was kind of curved.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh my God, that's so much bigger than I thought. And is that like a? Oh my, what kind of? Oh, it's
it's got
dimpled.
an acid etch, like a faux hamon, the kind of like cloud pattern. It's S7, hand hammered, everything done by hand.
Holy
Cut the
smokes.
scales, did the brass inlay, did all the scalloping.
pretty.
Like, it was just an incredible experience to
wow.
work in it. I went to a place. It's called Angel Sword. Is the forge. They sell incredible stuff at like Ren fairs and stuff, and they put on this 2-day knife making workshop where we got to work with their folks and do this thing start to finish, and it was such a cool experience.
Now you've got to get that knife put into one of your commissions.
Yeah. There you go.
Man.
I don't know. I put myself in one commission. I asked Tim Odland. Do you know him? He did a great piece, and he was running some special. He was trying to do some commissions, and for whatever reason, I ended up getting another one through him. And I actually put myself in that one wearing my like Ren Fair outfit with the sword that I had made. So I am a character in the Barbarian Ninja Turtle and Cerebus storyline somewhere.
Wow.
That one was kind of fun.
It's
the only time I ever did that, and I'm not sure what led me to ask him to do that, but I think I had just put this outfit together, and I was really proud of my armor and everything for my Ren Fair stuff, and I'm like, I want to hang out with Raph and Cerebus.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, we will we'll end here. So all the folks who are listening, be sure to stay tuned for our pizza recipe of the day, and I'll probably find something interesting, maybe another margarita type pizza. But we want to thank Josh for joining us, Eric and myself. Josh, where can folks find you on Instagram?
So Joshua Evan, JOSHUAEVEN on Instagram, and just my first and last name on Facebook, Joshua EVEN. And then the link to my comic arts fan gallery where there is everything's posted there. And it's good stuff. I enjoy it. I enjoy looking at this stuff all the time. It's been an amazing way to connect with other fans and the artists and stuff, and become a tiny piece of TMNT history. I never thought that I'd be here now. It's awesome,
man. And thanks for sharing with us the Portsmouth Minicon story and the picture, because that's so cool.
I love that thing. Yeah, it's so great.
God. All right, folks, we'll be right back.
That was like one of those lifetime achievements that I unlocked.
Oh yeah, like
done.
you said,
it's great.
Retirement account. So
yeah, maybe. Yeah, and I'll tell you my other Ninja Turtle #1 story sometime.
All right, we'll look forward to that, and we'll probably catch up with you at Granite.
So I'll see you guys in a couple months now.
We'll bid you adieu.
All right, have a great evening, guys. Thank you so much. I had a blast.